The struggle is real. Here I am talking about these things on a podcast, and then yet I don't even have a handle on it in my own family life. And so I'm a hypocrite for trying to talk about this is how you do it, whenever in my own home I'm struggling with these things and my family struggles with these things.
We all struggle. Just keep the faith. Don't give up on it.
Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Chad. Welcome back to the Catholic Dads podcast. It's been a bit of a hiatus, so we welcome everybody that's listening today.
Yes, welcome. And this morning we're going to have a different little structure. We're going to have a topic for the banter.
That's unique. Yeah, let's do that. So what's your topic for the banter?
Topic for banter is junk drawers.
Oh, junk drawers. That's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
For bantering, because it's unique to it's not unique to everyone. Everybody has that drawer.
Yeah.
At least I think everybody has that drawer.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what
Where's your drawer?
In the kitchen, of course. Yeah. Where else would a junk drawer be? Do you have a junk drawer?
I like it. We've got a junk drawer. It's not as full as it used to be. I think we try to manage it, at least inside. But I certainly have junk drawers all through my garage and my workbench, and the toolbox that I've got was actually a dresser that a buddy of mine was getting rid of, and I was like, I need storage for the garage, and
nice.
So I threw it in the garage, and I had illusions of painting it up and making it not look like a dresser, and I put some knobs on it and stuff, but ultimately it's the top drawer where all the tools are supposed to be is empty, because all the tools are in a plastic tub, so I can just carry it around wherever I go.
Yeah.
And then every other drawer is just stuffed full of stuff. So that's where my junk drawer is.
Yeah. So what is the junk drawer? I mean, so it's like you described it earlier, but describe it again for me what's the definition of it?
So my definition is the drawer where stuff goes that doesn't have a home, right? So it doesn't have a clear, the little flashlight thing that's it's really good to have a flashlight around the house, but I don't. I'll just put it in here.
Yeah.
Our junk drawer, I could go through it. It's got kebab skewers. It's where we keep the meat thermometer. It's got little napkin wrap ornamental things we use once a year for special dinners. There's got some small Ziploc bags. It's just kind of it's just a assemblage of stuff.
Yeah. And can you find anything readily handed?
I know exactly.
Is it readily findable in your junk drawer?
Yeah, because I know everything.
So your junk drawer is somewhat organized. That's good. I think that says something. So my thoughts, because I cleaned my garage semi this past weekend,
nice.
And my thoughts go back to garages and attics in our homes are usually cluttered beyond belief with things that we hold on to.
Yep.
And we hold on to it, and the longer we hold on to something like that, the harder it becomes to let go.
Right.
And maybe I overthink this, but I think that internally, for me at least, it's the same way with call it feelings, call it experiences, or whatever. I think that I hold on to it in the quote unquote attic or garage of my mind, and the longer you hang on to those things, the harder it is for you to let them go. So a lot of the things that we deal with, we don't let them go, and they're doing us harm, and we need to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I was going through my garage, I was finding these buckets of, what do you call them?
Like the totes?
The totes, thank you. Yeah, the plastic totes. I had 2 plastic totes in the garage that I had a rough idea what was in them, but I hadn't looked in those probably 3 years.
Right.
So I didn't even look at it. I just threw everything in it away.
Wow.
And it was very difficult to do because I go through my process of what if there's pictures? Because pictures are my thing,
right.
as you know.
Yeah.
Pictures are my thing. I'm like, what if there's a picture in here?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to just kind of take a deep breath, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't looked in this thing, and I just dumped it out.
Wow.
And it's just from the spiritual side of that, of the junk drawer or whatever. And I guess what I was trying to get to at the banter topic was, what are those things that we're holding on to that's in the junk drawer of our minds, the junk drawer of our hearts, or the garage or the attic that really aren't doing any good
So
and
I'll take it
trying to throw it away.
Yeah. I'll take that another level, right? Because the other definition of junk drawer is the stuff we just put stuff into. That's
And that's more what ours is.
it's not that like it's not stuff that you want to use later. You just don't have a home for. It's stuff that you're just like you don't even think about and you just dump it somewhere. And there's maybe this is related to or the thoughts trying to come together in my mind, but it's there's this idea too of just why not that we're holding on to it, but that we just throw stuff away without like we're not giving it a thought, right? So it's like I've got this thing and it has a purpose and it should go somewhere. And I was thinking as you were talking about when they go into these like hoarder houses on TV, they always make 3 piles. One is the keep pile, the giveaway or sell pile, and then the throwaway pile. And like you have something, an item in your house, and you don't put the effort into actually giving it any actual thought. Like, do I really need this? Do I want to hold on to it? Does it have a use for somebody else? It just, I'll just put it in here, right? And so that it's almost like a use. There's kind of a use argument there too, right? We're like, I'm not going to consider it for its value. I'm just going to put it to the side. And we can do that with people. We can do that with our own experiences. Well, I don't really care where we go. Let's just go out to eat tonight.
Yeah.
Well, let's make it, how often do you get to go out to eat with your family? Let's, make sure that we go somewhere that everybody's going to enjoy. Let's go somewhere. I don't know.
That could be a challenge.
I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense or if I'm putting the thought together well, but it's like, the junk drawer is where you take everything that's on the counter that you should really take the time to give some value to, and you're not giving any value to it, so you're just going to put it in the drawer. And we can do that with people. We can do that with things.
Yeah. But and also, I mean, because I was looking for these little headphones here.
Right.
Because I needed some headphones to check the levels. Mm-hmm. And the only place where I know to find headphones are in the junk drawer.
Right, exactly.
So I open up the junk drawer, and it's just overflowing.
Yep.
And I find several pairs of headphones. They're all tangled together.
Exactly.
It's just like,
yep.
If this had the value, like you're talking about, why are we treating it like this? Why don't we find a proper home for it?
Right.
And anyway, so like in the greater analogy, maybe those things in our minds do have value, but let's apply the appropriate value to them. And those things that are in our heads that are causing us anxiety or grief or whatever, we need to let them go. And the best way to let them go, in my opinion, is talk to a spiritual director, go to confession, and have a good friend that maybe you can have discussions with and let them go. So that was my my thought for the banter topic.
I like it. It's good. A little structure.
Yeah. And getting the juices flowing again. So on to the topic.
Yeah.
So I texted you, I want to say it was last Thursday morning. And I said, hey, topic.
Yep.
The struggle is real.
Yep.
It's about our struggles and day-to-day life and how we deal with them. And that night was Theology of the Body for Teens, which your son was graciously a part of.
And I was in an airplane coming home from work.
Yeah. And it was hilarious because one of the video titles flashed up and it said, "The struggle is real." Nice. So I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool,
What was I know what the girls did last night. Was it the pornography topic that you did as well? I never actually asked Porter, so that's my failing. But.
Yeah, no, it was about, it wasn't strictly about that. Yeah. It's about multiple different, not specific about porn, but it did talk about like, how do you separate the want and desire for these feelings of pleasure in certain things, and I think it was actually the one that flashed it that the struggle is real. It was a priest that was giving the video talk.
Yeah.
And he had said that to deny himself something good trains himself to deny himself of something bad.
Yeah.
Both of them are quote unquote pleasurable.
Right.
So like, for example, food, like he would go without a meal or whatever. Yeah. So it was like, and then he went into the whole like virtue and vices, so what is the vice, and then find that opposing virtue. And so like, that was kind of the topic. It was really
not to derail the podcast, but out of curiosity, right?
Yeah. So it was, but it was neat, because I was like, the struggle is real, and just to bring it back to the whole topic of the podcast and the purpose of this podcast in particular is, for me, is that we try to be real about what's going on in our lives, and how to as a dad, as a maybe a guy, a new dad who's got new kids, that's like looking forward to life with children and the family dynamic, or maybe it's a newly Catholic dad come to the faith, and now it's just how do we relate to those people, and how do we, like, and I'm not going to say share wisdom. I think I've said that before. It's like, because I'm still learning, but like, how do we deal with things? And maybe we could help them deal with things.
Absolutely.
And at least for me, these last hiatus months were basically due to a lot of curveballs being thrown our way by way of, family life, and, just some really deep things happening, with the kids. And I started just, my first thing is to retreat.
Yep.
It's like my first thing is, here I am talking about these things on a podcast, and then yet I don't even have a handle on it in my own family life. So I'm a hypocrite for trying to like talk about this is how you do it, whenever in my own home I'm struggling with these things and my family struggles with these things. So first and foremost, part of the stepping back from my part was that.
Yep.
And I was definitely convicted by just some thoughts, I don't even know when it occurred, but it was like, we are attacked by the devil whenever we're close to doing something good. If we're far away from God, the devil doesn't really care about us. But the closer we get to God, and the closer I think that when we get to expanding or forwarding his kingdom, that's when the devil's like, wait a minute, we got to do something about this.
Right.
So, I was convicted by that thought. And then I was also convicted of, this is an opportunity to be true to your quote unquote mission statement of what this podcast is all about. And, just like talk about the struggle is real. It's like you won't ever have all the answers. And just because the right thing to do, just like in life, and we know that we're not supposed to speed. We know we're not supposed to, eat, a whole bag of Julio's, tortilla chips and a big thing of guacamole if we want to stay healthy. I mean, we know these things, yet we still, kind of rail against them. So
I challenge that because guacamole is healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a good point, though. I think we try to make excuses for the reasons why we do the things that we do. We know what we like, and we know what we want to do. So I think sometimes we make excuses. So I challenge your challenge. But anyway, I thought I would set the tone for that and get your thoughts on the topic, and at least what I've shared so far.
Yeah. No. I'll sorry. I'll follow your lead as far as what we want to talk about in terms of the struggle and, the hiatus. And I think, looking at where we go with the podcast, I felt the same. There's a fine line we need to walk, because we are putting ourselves out there publicly about, what are we struggling with and how we can share that in a way that'll help other dads and other Catholic dads, but also preserve the sanctity of our family and our privacy. And, so that, I think that's kind of where I was at over the last few months of trying to understand where that is. And I mean, to be honest, I think, as soon as we've gone through some of the podcast topics that we have, I felt an immediate, I wouldn't call it an attack. It was just, I fell away from a lot of the things that I should have been doing as well. And it was, it kind of all coincided with the same time period and was building up. And then once the hiatus that we took happened as well. So I think you're right about, the coming under attack when you do things. And, I think that's very real. And so I've been experiencing that as well. And I think I've said this before, it's one of my favorite lines from, Dennis Prager, which is where I get, half of my wisdom from. The rest of it comes from the church. If he's got a phrase that says, if you think someone in your life has everything together, then you don't know them very well. And to the level that you know what's going on in a real way with the people around you is a good measure of how much you really know them. And so the things that we've shared and, over the last couple months, I mean, that's because of a private relationship, and none of, those things don't need to be shared across the podcast. But that, as far as sharing that with the greater public, don't ever think that because we're doing a podcast, we have it all together, right? And the flip side, of course, is, in your marriages, if you're listening, you're married, if you're not married, if you've got kids, the struggle is real means that we're all struggling, and every house has four walls, and behind those four walls, you can never really know what's going on. And I think, we've talked about that in a podcast before. Um, and so I think the topic is more about maybe how do you handle that, and where do we go from there, and some of those solutions. But, just to be clear, I don't have a theology degree. I don't, I'm just a Catholic convert and a dad that, screws up way more than, I would like to admit. And, at least I have, some visibility to that. But really as your kids grow, as they enter those teenage years, as your relationship with them becomes much more type of a mentor rather than a disciplinarian, you look back at all the ways that you disciplined. And for me, I know I wasn't effective. I know that the relationships I have now probably would be better if I had done things differently. If I hadn't, always gone to, they always, internally the family's always like, you're 0 to 60, right? I mean, if I had been more of a 0 to 25 to 40 to, kind of dad, maybe some things would be different now. So yeah, so I think putting that out there and letting people know that, part of the hiatus was because of that. And, we're back and we'd like to get back in regular mode. But, these are concerns because we are real people.
Yeah.
And we have real lives. And that's what's been going on in the background, I think is good.
Yeah. So, I think whenever, and especially whenever going to that topic from the theology of the body group, looking at it, pride is the root of everything that we've, from the fall, right? It was all pride. And I think that especially as men, as Catholic dads, just as men in general, I think this pride comes up in us that whenever something doesn't go our way, or whenever, it's just a good way to put it. When things aren't going our way, there's a pride thing that kicks in that says, I can't let people know about this. I gotta appear, so it's more for self-preservation. We feel that it's like, this is what we have to do. Because if your house is on fire, you're not gonna sit in the room and just say, well, by golly, I'm gonna, I can't let anybody know that my house is on fire. I'm okay. Everything's okay. You're gonna get out of the house.
Right.
So there's a part of it where it's like we need to overcome that pride, and in these experiences of the past couple of months have really humbled me, and that's the a good altering virtue for pride is humility. And I think the benefit of having the church as a backing is because we have the sacraments. We can go to we go to mass and we go to confession, and you can really express these things, and it helps like soften that brick wall that you might have building up, and that helps combat that pride.
I would say, just to jump in there, so the sacraments, and not taking anything away from that, the community as well is such a key part of at least in being a Catholic Kingwood resident, right? Is we have the Acts community and Knights and teams of Our Ladies, and a lot of these organizations and groups in the church are there for also what you're talking about, because going back to the idea is every house has four walls and everybody's struggling. Being in teams of Our Lady or being in an Acts community where you've got brothers, the difference between, at least in my opinion, of being in a secular world where you're struggling, where some of the things are a struggle, may not even be seen as a struggle in the secular world, or would be very difficult to find a community that would support you. Right? Versus already being in the church where, honestly, we're all struggling with the same stuff. When it comes down to it, the church has been around for 2,000 years to help us struggle with the stuff that we were struggling with 2,000 years ago. And I love reading scripture and, pointing out to the kids, this seems like it could have happened yesterday, right? People are people, and we've always been people. And, whether you give us a cell phone or a mule, it doesn't matter. People are still people. Pride is still pride. Greed is still greed. Lust is still lust. We've been the same for a really long time. And to know that you're in a community of people that, feel the same way are coming from the same frame of reference, so that you can have those kind of talks in you know, a one-on-one. This is what's going on with my family. This is what's going on with our marriage. You know, but you all share a frame of reference that allows you to then, I guess, you know, to use a kind of a cliche term, it's kind of a safe space to say, hey, you know, this is what's going on in my family. And you immediately know the person on the other side of the table or the other side on the phone will understand the context of why that's difficult. Where, you know, in a secular world without that foundation, you may be talking to somebody at work that thinks whatever you're going through is no big deal, right? Or
Right.
would be so uncomfortable because, you know, well, I didn't know people struggle with that, you know,
Yeah.
or whatever, right? You know, so the being in the community allows you to have those kind of conversations. And, you know, I've got deeper relationships with folks in the church through, you know, our relationships and that sort of thing that I don't think would have been possible had we not had that frame of reference, right?
Yeah.
That commonality of purpose.
Yeah. So I'm going to flip this argument on its head now. So I'm glad it went this way
Uh-huh.
because I was really hoping of a good segue. So there are times where I know I've struggled with this, and I know other people struggle with it as well, that they don't feel God's presence at all. And so for somebody to say, go to the community, you know, go to the sacraments, which I just said and we
Yep.
just said, if they're not feeling that, it can be very difficult. And there's a concern there because these are people that are honestly and earnestly seeking, reaching, hoping. They hear people talk like we're talking right now.
Right.
They hear people talk like, be it on KSBJ, be it friends that
Yep.
are, you know, in the parish or other friends that they just know, in the activities that they know, talking about how much they feel God's presence and how much they just love God and how much they feel God's love back, and they don't.
Right. Absolutely.
And they think something's wrong.
Yep.
They think, are you crazy? And
Right.
I'm, you know, am I crazy?
Yeah.
And that creates this this conflict. And the struggle in that point that's a totally different struggle. Now you're talking about, I fully want and you know, and hope and expect and, you know, to have this relationship with Christ and to feel the Holy Spirit move in my life, and I don't. And what would your advice be to somebody that comes to you with
So
that?
two things. First, I would say still no better place than in the church to have these conversations, because the church has experience with this. And you know, personally, I've never been that guy. So I'll answer your questions. But you know, one of my biggest struggles in all of my Christian life has been trying to figure out what it means to be Christian. Because I grew up in this evangelical Colorado Springs area with all of the high school kids that were crazy for Christ, right? But then they'd run up behind each other and like goose each other, right? So not, you know, just very struggled with the hypocrisy when I was growing up. To answer your two questions, you know, Mother Teresa, perfect example for that, Saint Mother Teresa. You know, that was her story. She had this incredible experience of God early in her life, and then tried to find that experience again through the whole rest of her life, because she only had it the one time, and she seeked it for the rest of her life. And look what she did even without that, right? So that doesn't make you a Christian. And then, you know, so that was the first part. And the second part is, shoot, I should have written it down while you were talking. But Saint Mother Teresa was the first one that came to mind.
Yeah.
The other part of that is, you know, I think, you know, back to my previous four walls conversation, you really don't know what's going on in you know, the folks. It's the same kind of thing, right? We're putting ourselves out there in a podcast. People that put themselves out there, you know, that Christ is moving in their life and the Holy Spirit is moving them, and even, you know, we know folks and have met folks that, you know, believe Christ talks to them in their prayer, and you know, and we've had those conversations internally in our family. It's like, I've never heard Christ in my prayer, right? It's like everybody has you know, God is approaching each of us and working in each of us in a different way. And one person's experience, because of their temperaments, which we've talked about on previous podcasts, right, can be very, you know, touchy-feely and very emotional and very engaged. For me, my faith is very intellectual. It's really more of a behavioral code that I'm trying to live up to, that I see value in, right? I mean, I'm just being honest, right?
Yeah.
It's not a hugely spiritual thing. I've had, some very spiritual kind of experiences before, but, and that may be a topic for another podcast, but, those experiences I've almost recognized as being very rare, and scary at the same time, that, to the extent that there's probably part of me that's not seeking that out to be to happen too frequently, right?
Yeah.
But if you've lost that experience of God in your life, you're in good company, because that's going to be the majority of people in the church.
So it's amazing that you're here saying those things, because the Mother Teresa and the "you're in good company," those were words that came out of my mouth whenever we were having these discussions. What brought this up in the situation that I've got in my head.
Yeah.
So that was my point.
Yeah.
I said, first and foremost, you're in good company.
Yep.
Because if Mother Teresa, Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta, didn't feel God's presence for all those years, that just goes to show. And then the second thing that I brought up, and this is what I've been looking up, is Mark chapter 9, verse 29. I think it is. No, it was verse 24. So it's talking about there's a father that's coming to Jesus, and there's a spirit that's tormented him, and he's asking Jesus, please help me cast out this demon, and starting in 22, it has often thrown him into fire and into water to kill him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Jesus said to him, if you can, everything is possible to one who has faith. Then the boy's father cried out, I do believe, help my unbelief. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, I mean, as sure as I'm sitting in front of you right now, I have said those words so many times in my life. Mm-hmm. Because I feel that, I feel that whenever I do feel that, I don't want to be all over dramatic and call it abandonment or nothing, but it's like, when you don't feel that presence of God in your life for whatever reason, I just have to utter those words, I believe, help my unbelief. And I think that's what faith is, mm-hmm. Faith and faith is a gift and hope. And, so with faith and hope and love, the virtues, I can't say anything more than just to look to the way the saints have been, the great examples of the saints like Mother Teresa. Look in the Bible, we see these people. It's like, I believe, but help my unbelief. I think it's part of the human condition. Mm-hmm. The human condition is we all want to be in community with somebody. We all want somebody to love, mm-hmm. We want somebody to love us. And when we don't feel that the way that we expect it, it's easy for us to say, I don't have it. So it's like, we got to look for those things that are in our life right now that are God-given and recognize them as God-given gifts and blessings. And if it makes, if it maybe feels like you're stretching, all I can say is that when you truly step back and you look at the things that you have in your life, they are gifts by God. You can say, well, my money that I have bought that thing. That's not a gift from God. But then you have to, okay, let's go back. Let's go back and see how did this work, right? How did this come about in your life? And if you look with eyes of faith, you can see that, okay, so God gave me maybe the parents that I had, an upbringing that I had, an experience that I had that moved me a certain way, that, maybe I narrowly escaped doing something stupid whenever I was, just fresh out of college, right. And I would have been in jail.
Right.
Speaking from experience. Your life would have turned out a whole lot different.
Yep.
Maybe I would have, gone a totally different path and wouldn't be here. So look at those things, mm-hmm. and recognize them for what they are, and just have faith that you are in good company.
So I would go two more thoughts on that. One is kind of this modern discussion, which I seem to fall back in because it fascinates me. And the other is action versus feeling. So the first thing is this experiential drive for God and for the Holy Spirit. And I don't know the answer to this, but I wonder how much of that is a modern, in two different ways, a modern approach. One would be we're all about experiences. We're all about like the feel good, the big movie event, the vacation, the amusement park, the thrill. That's our modern life, right? I want the next, iPhone, right?
That's not modern though. I mean, I've felt this my whole life.
So that, but that's one thing in terms of that seeking the experience, making it experiential, right? The flip side is we may have been able to have a lot more of those experiences with God when we didn't have all the clutter in our life. So I could see that going both ways, right? The modern person having much more difficulty experiencing God in their life because we have so many distractions. And then the other side of it would be the modern person seeking that because we're really putting God in the same place that we're putting like the movie premiere, or we're putting that experience in the same place that we put other experiences. Then I don't know which way to go. I'd have to think about that.
So clear out the junk drawer? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Declutter, right? And then the other thought is you were talking about, and I think you described it well, is, love is both a feeling, but it's also a verb. And so, if you're in a place where you don't feel love for your spouse, or you don't feel love for your kids, or you don't feel love for your job, job being like the very minor of those, those three, the best advice is to just act the way that you do, or if you do. So especially in terms of marriage, that becomes a really nasty spiral, right? Well, I don't really feel, I'm not really in love anymore. We've been together for so long. The feeling's not really there. Okay, well, when was the last time you did anything for her birthday or anniversary? Well, we don't really do that anymore. When was the last time you did something nice for her? Well, we don't really go out anymore. Okay, well, why don't you start going out and doing nice things? And by doing the things, the emotion comes. And I think faith it tracks in the exact same route. So I think when we talk about faith, there's there's the things that we do, in the doing, and by the doing helps with the stuff, and we've all experienced it. When we start feeling the times that we start feeling the most away from the church is the time when we're actually the most away from church. So those kind of go hand in hand. Yeah. So I think if you combine those thoughts into the awareness, whether it's accurate or not, but the awareness that we seek in this culture, this immediate emotional connection with experiences. And if we make God just experiential, which is kind of, not to ding on KSPJ, but kind of that's how that Protestant evangelical, there's a bit of that track, I think, that you see there, right? It's like, just an amazing event. Oh, this is such a, Holy Spirit was working with all of us. You hear those like taglines in the commercials, right?
I believe it happens. I've got a friend, and I have an interview with him on another podcast, but he's amazing. He's an amazing guy, and he has those experiences. I mean, it's just like, I don't doubt that it's true.
Right.
It's me just either. That for me personally, I've never ever heard God speaking like you and I are talking.
Right.
And you know what I mean? And felt God like that.
Right.
Mine is more like, look at, I sit in this house that our friends helped us rebuild, because after we flooded, you and all of the neighbors and, just everybody came out in droves to help us.
Yep.
And that's not you doing it. That's God doing it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's like, those are the ways that I experience God. I don't hear God saying, Chad, I want you to do this. You know what I mean? So it's, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's the deal. I mean, so when some people get it that way,
right,
and other people get it the other way,
yep,
it's like, if you're a person that is very literal and you need to like understand, like, black and white, show me this and that, and you hear that God is present in somebody's life in that way,
right,
that bold of a way where they hear God talking, they feel God's presence, like, somebody's in the room, and they don't. It's hard to explain to those people that it's okay, because everybody experiences God different,
right.
And it's not to say that your relationship with Christ and with the Trinity is any different than theirs, or any better, is what I meant to say. I mean, it's just different,
right?
And it's okay. You know, I mean, and even like again, even in the Bible, you know, you got this man who's just begging for Christ to help.
Yeah.
And he's like, I do have faith. You know, I do believe. Help my unbelief. You know, so
Yep.
he's talking to Christ right there. And Christ is right in front of him.
Yep.
And he's saying, help my unbelief,
Yep.
right? And you have the disciples who, you know, they're walking with Christ, and he says, this is my body. You know, if you eat my flesh and drink my blood, and then a lot of
They all
people
walk
left
away,
him
right?
there. I mean,
Yep. And how
they
many
walked with Christ.
How many apostles
on
were at the
earth.
cross?
You
How
know,
many
it's-
how many
yeah,
walked
so-
with him to the cross?
Exactly. So it's like you're in good company, folks. You know, keep the faith. We kind of up against a time crunch here, so we do have to wrap it up. But you know, keep the faith and keep praying. And I say that is the thing. When you don't know what to do, pray.
Yep. Yep.
You know, if there's one of the humility lessons that I've learned in this last, you know, couple months, is that you're going to be at a spot where you have no idea what to do. And it's like, I don't know the best thing to do. And as a man, that's troubling to me. We're men. We should know what to do. Always. But you know what? Admit that you don't know what to do. And when you admit you don't know what to do, pray.
Yep.
And if you're fortunate enough to have a spouse, you know, pray with your wife. And, you know, to me, that's the most powerful, quote unquote, advice that I've learned in this experience.
I think it's good. I think this is fruit for many more conversations, to be sure. Because I think, you know, one of the hardest things in all of life is to compare yourself to someone else. And if you're
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Absolutely. And if you're doing it in your faith life, that is even more dangerous for your soul and for your family, and it can be such a struggle. I think that's a huge message today, is you know, God is going to give you what you need in the way that he thinks you need it. And he's given you the awareness of the joy of your family and your house. You know, that's how you're being fed. That's how you're being fed. If he's, you know, ringing bells in your house, you know, in the middle of the night to wake you up, that's how he's feeding you. And that's, you know, it is, you know, it's his plan. It's your life. It's another family. It's your family. Don't make those comparisons, because it's so dangerous. And the devil loves that, right? Just loves it. So, yeah, I think that's great advice. Is, you know, we all struggle. Just keep the faith. Don't give up on it. Yeah.
Amen.
I like it.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we look forward to many more podcasts in the future. And as always, St. Joseph,
Pray for us. Is this the topic, structuring the banter? Because that would be structure for the banter if we were talking about structuring the banter.
what? It's too early for that.